Mist gathers on the high plateau, thick as breath, curling in slow spirals above the city's sleeping stones. Antananarivo, the citadel of the marina, rises from the earth like a memory half remembered. Its wooden palaces perched atop the world, suspended between cloud and soil. The Rova home of kings and the restless dead is a labyrinth of corridors, slick with dew and the echo of old footfalls. Here the air is humid, even at dusk, heavy with the scent of rain and the unyielding press of ancestral eyes. A torch gutters in the lee of a carved pillar, its flame shivering with each uncertain wind. Beyond its reach, darkness pools in the corners, thick and watchful. Drums sound from somewhere below, slow, deliberate, a heartbeat for the mountain. The rhythm is not festive. It is ritual, warning the pulse of a kingdom, measuring itself against encroaching night. In these halls, the silence is not peace. It is anticipation. Shadows move behind lacquered doors, voices low and careful faces, half lit and unreadable. Servants glide on bare feet, heads bowed. Courtiers linger, listening for the next shift in power. The Rova watches itself. Every glance is a question. Every whisper is a wager. Somewhere within these wooden arteries, a woman waits, not yet a queen, not yet a widow. Her presence is felt, but not seen. A stillness at the center of the storm, a mind weighing the cost of every breath. The walls remember her footsteps. The floors creak with her patience. She is the consort, but already the air bends around her, wary and expectant. In the mist, her silhouette is a question the night cannot answer. The sun has slipped behind the highlands rim, and with it the last warmth bleeds from the palace candles. Gutter in alcoves, their light too fragile to dispel the ancestral cold. In the council chamber, men speak softly their words, chosen with the precision of a blade drawn in darkness. Tradition is their shield, but the world presses in foreign traders at the coast, missionaries with their Bibles and their promises, French and British names, spoken in the hush of worry. The kingdom is not what it was. The old King Andrianampoi Marina shaped these stones with the certainty of prophecy, but prophecy is brittle. Now his son lies dying, breath shallow, the line of succession tangled as forest roots. The court gathers in knots, advisors, generals, priests, each with a stake, each with a secret. The queen consort sits apart. Her eyes lowered, her silence more eloquent than any speech. They debate treaties and tariffs, the cost of gunpowder, the encroachment of Christian faith. Some urge openness, the embrace of foreign knowledge. Others whisper of contamination, the slow death of tradition beneath imported creeds. The queen's gaze flickers from face to face, weighing not arguments, but allegiances. She knows the language of power is not spoken aloud. It is measured in who stands closest to the dying king who is summoned at dusk, who is left waiting in the rain. Outside, the drums change tempo. A warning, or perhaps a summons. The queen's hand tightens on the carved arm of her chair. She remembers the omens, a hawk circling at noon, the sudden silence of songbirds, the way the mist clings to the Rova's eaves, as if reluctant to depart. She knows the ancestors are watching. Their silence is not approval. It is a test. In the corridors, the servants bow lower. In the courtyards, guards shift their spears. eyes narrowed against the dark. The queen's rivals, noble houses, jealous consorts. Would-be regents move in shadows, their plans as old as the stones beneath their feet. She listens to the cadence of their footsteps, the pause before a door opens, the careful way they greet her. There are no raised voices, no open threats. Here power is a cold hand pressed to the throat, gentle but unyielding. The palace is a chessboard, and every piece trembles. Before the rova, before the drums and the watchful silence, there was another night. She was a girl. Then Ranavalona, not yet crowned, not yet feared. Her father's warning came in a whisper. Trust is a blade that cuts both ways. She did not understand until the betrayal, the plot against her blood, the quiet disappearance of kin, the way a family can vanish between dusk and dawn. She remembers the terror most of all, not the spectacle of violence, but its absence. The way the world continued indifferent, as if nothing had changed. She learned then that fear is a current beneath the surface, invisible but inexorable. It can be harnessed. It can be survived. In the years that followed, she watched. She listened. She learned to read the spaces between words, the tremor in a hand, the hesitation before a bow. She vowed never to be powerless again. Trust became a coin she never spent lightly. She kept her counsel. Her ambitions folded within her like a knife in a sleeve. Now, in the rova's heart, she feels the old wound throb. The faces have changed, but the game is the same. Loyalty is a mask, and behind every smile is a reckoning. She has survived by mastering fear, her own and that of others. She knows what it is to be hunted. She knows what it is to hunt. The king's breath rattles in the high chamber. Each exhale a little fainter, a little more uncertain. Outside, the night presses close, the mist thickening until the city is nothing but the memory of torches and the soft pulse of drums. The queen consort moves through the palace like a shadow, her retinue silent, her eyes unblinking. A council is summoned. Not all are invited. In the antechamber, a nobleman, once a confidant, now a question, waits with hands folded, his gaze fixed on the floor. He has been too eager, too bold in his alliances, his loyalty a little too convenient. The queen's advisors murmur their voices like water over stones. The decision is made without fanfare. There is no accusation, no spectacle. Only a summons, a walk through the mist-choked corridors, the hush of footsteps on polished wood. The trial is brief. The outcome is certain. He does not return from the antechamber. The court understands what judgment looks like. There is no need for proclamation, no need for blood on the stones. The march ended in silence. Elsewhere, a letter is burned before it can be read. A servant is reassigned to a distant province. An advisor's name is omitted from the next morning's roster. The queen's will is a quiet wind, rearranging the palace with invisible hands. Those who remain understand. The rules have changed. The cost of ambition is measured in absence. The king lingers, his body frail. His mind drifting, the queen stands at the foot of his bed. Her expression unreadable, she does not weep. She does not pray. Her grief, if it exists, is locked behind the mask of necessity. She is already more than consort. Not yet sovereign, but in the hush between breaths, her authority settles like dust on every surface. Outside, the drums resume their slow, implacable rhythm. The city listens uncertain. The ancestors, if they approve, say nothing. Morning comes slowly to the highlands, the mist reluctant to release its grip. The palace is quieter than before. Servants move with new caution. Courtiers speak in softer tones. The absence of the nobleman is noted, never remarked upon. His rooms are cleared, his name erased from the ledgers. The lesson is not lost on those who remain. The queen walks the colonnades alone. Her steps measured, her face composed. She has gained security, but the cost is a thinning of trust, a deepening of solitude. In the reflection of lacquered wood, she sees herself as the palace sees her, inscrutable, formidable, alone. The power she has claimed is absolute, but it is a power that isolates. Every victory is a subtraction. She pauses at a window, watching the mist swirl over the city below. Somewhere a drumbeat falters, resumes. The ancestors are silent, but their judgment is felt in the heaviness of the air. The queen's eyes linger on the horizon, where the world beyond the highlands waits. Foreign ships, foreign faiths, foreign threats. She does not flinch. She does not smile. Her reign has not yet begun, but already the city knows her will. In the hush of the morning, a whisper drifts through the palace, soft as breath, cold as prophecy. Mist rises in the hollows of Antananarivo. A pale shroud clings to the red earth. The polished bones of the highland city drink the silence. The air is heavy, humid, alive with the memory of rain. The promise of thunder lingers down the slopes. Drums murmur in the darkness, slow, deliberate. A pulse that is both warning and remembrance. Their rhythm echoes off the stone walls of the Rova. The royal citadel perched above the city, the wood of ancient palaces drinks the night's damp. The ancestors' silence presses in. Thick as fog, a torch gutters in the windless corridor. Shadows flicker and crawl across lacquered floorboards, climbing the carved pillars where the faces of forgotten kings are lost in gloom. In these halls, every footstep is measured, every breath drawn as if it might be the last. Courtiers move like wraiths, their voices swallowed by the hush. They wait, eyes lowered for the next command, the next judgment, the next name to be spoken, or left unsaid, somewhere behind a closed door. A woman sits in the darkness. Her presence is felt more than seen. A stillness at the heart of the storm. A gaze that weighs the souls of men. She is not named, not yet, but her shadow stretches across every threshold. The city below dreams in uneasy sleep, while in the Rova power gathers like thunderclouds, silent and inexorable. This is not the coronation of a beloved queen. There are no jubilant crowds, no foreign banners waving in the square, no easy assurances of peace. Instead, there is the hush of uncertainty, the slow, grinding tension of a kingdom balanced on the knife edge of tradition and the encroaching shadow of the outside world. In the council chamber, the air is thick with sweat and suspicion. The advisors, old men with faces carved by years of compromise. Younger men with foreign schooling in their eyes sit in a circle, their hands folded. their words chosen with surgical care. Each knows the weight of a single misstep. The queen newly crowned sits above them. Her face unreadable in the half-light, the gold of her diadem catches the torch's flame, but gives back no warmth. The past king's death has not yet faded from memory. It clings to the walls, a residue of unfinished business and whispered accusation. Some say he was poisoned. Others say he died of the fever that stalks the highlands every season. The truth is irrelevant now. What matters is the void he left and the woman who stepped into it. Foreign envoys have sent their gifts, their letters heavy with veiled threats and promises. They speak of commerce, of faith, of progress. They speak of treaties written on paper, but the queen's world is carved in wood and stone, in the bones of her ancestors and the silence that follows a command. She listens to their words, but her eyes measure the distance between the old ways and the new, between the certainty of ancestral law and the uncertainty of foreign ambition. Within the palace, alliances shift like the mist outside. An advisor lingers too long at the queen's side. Another is seen whispering with a foreign merchant in a shadowed courtyard. There are no accusations, only the slow tightening of the noose. The queen moves through her day like a chess master, each gesture calculated, each silence deliberate. Her power is not loud. It is the hush before the storm, the pause between the drumbeats, the knowledge that at any moment the ground may open beneath your feet. No one raises their voice, no one dares. Even the children in the palace walk softly, learning early that survival depends on what is left unsaid. Long before the crown, before the weight of gold and the iron of command, there was a girl in the shadow of power. She learned early that trust is a blade with no handle. Her father, a favored noble, was betrayed for a promise that never came. His body was carried away at dusk, his name spoken only in whispers. She remembers the taste of fear, how it dries the mouth, how it sharpens the senses. She remembers the night her world changed, the hush in the corridor, the flicker of a torch, the soft footsteps of men who would not meet her eyes. She remembers her mother's silence, the way grief was hidden behind a mask of obedience. In that moment, she understood what it meant to be powerless. She learned that mercy is a luxury for those who do not expect betrayal. She made a vow, silent and unbreakable. Never again would she be at the mercy of another's ambition or another's pity. Fear, she decided, could be a weapon, if only she could master it before it mastered her, years later. As she sits beneath the ancestral roof, the memory is never far. It shapes every judgment, every alliance, every silence. Power, she knows, is not inherited. It is seized, and it is kept by those who understand the cost. The coronation is over. The drums have faded. The city below stirs in the morning mist, waiting for a sign in the palace. The queen begins her reign with a test. A name is spoken in the council. A nobleman whose loyalty is uncertain, whose ambition is whispered about in the market stalls and the palace kitchens. There is no public accusation, no spectacle. The queen calls for a trial, invoking the law of the ancestors. As old as the stones beneath her feet, the man is summoned at dawn. His household is silent. His wife's eyes are red, but she does not weep. He walks the length of the palace corridor, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. At the threshold, he kneels. As custom demands, the queen's voice is cold, measured without anger or pity. There are questions, but they are formalities. Everyone knows the outcome. The ordeal is not for the crowd. It is for the court, for those who watch and learn. The accused is led away, flanked by guards, whose faces are blank as riverstones. No one speaks. The march ends with no survivors by nightfall. The nobleman's house is empty. His name is struck from the rolls. His allies avert their eyes. The court understands what judgment looks like, even when it is wrapped in silence. In the days that follow, the queen receives pledges of loyalty. Some are sincere, most are calculated. She watches each face, measuring the distance between fear and devotion. She knows that power is never secure. It must be renewed with every sunrise. Every act of judgment, every silence that follows a command. In the city below, mothers caution their sons to walk softly, to speak only when spoken to. In the palace, the advisors learn that loyalty is not a shield. It is a test, and the test never ends. The city is quieter now. The drums have ceased, leaving only the wind and the distant call of night birds. In the palace, the queen sits alone, her hands folded, her gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the window. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and rain. She has won the first battle, but the victory is cold. Each act of power is a wound that doesn't heal. She has gained obedience, but lost something nameless, a piece of herself left behind in the echoing corridors. In the silence that follows a command, she does not weep, she does not pray. Instead, she listens to the hush that fills the palace. The ancestral silence that is her only companion. She knows that to rule is to be alone, to trust no one, to let fear and devotion bind the kingdom tighter than chains. Outside, the mist thickens, somewhere in the darkness. A drum sounds, a single measured beat. Almost too soft to hear, the queen closes her eyes. In the stillness, a whisper moves through the halls. The crown is never safe, not even from the one who wears it. Mist clings to the high plateau. It swallows the slopes of Antananarivo, long before the sun has finished its descent. The city's Rova, its wooden palaces perched atop the highest hill, emerges only as a silhouette. Ribs and eaves outlined by the flicker of torches struggling against the nocturnal damp. The air is thick, suspended between rain and memory. Far below, the rice paddies sleep beneath their shroud. But up here, the world is restless. Somewhere in the darkness, a drum begins. It is not the frenzied call of war, nor the celebratory thunder of festival. It is a measured, patient sound, each beat separated by the length of a held breath. The rhythm moves through the wooden beams, through the souls of those who walk the corridors, and settles in the marrow of the watchers inside the Rova. The air is denser still. The corridors are narrow, the floors polished by generations of footsteps, the walls lined with ancestral talismans, stones, feathers, woven charms. Shadows gather in the corners, where servants pass with eyes lowered, and courtiers lean together, speaking in voices too soft to travel. Every syllable is measured. Every silence is a message. In a chamber where the lacquered wood gleams like old blood, a single torch gutters in its bracket. Its light stutters over faces, over the glint of gold at a wrist, over the eyes of those who have learned to watch without seeming to. The queen is not yet seen, but her presence is felt, a tension in the air, a certainty that the watcher is herself watched. In this palace of mist and memory, power is not a crown, but a shadow that moves before the torchlight, silent and inexorable by daylight. The highlands breathe more easily, but the tension does not lift. The rova is a living thing, its heartbeat set by the queen's will and the slow, relentless march of tradition. The foreign envoys arrive in the morning, their boots caked with the mud of the lower valleys, their faces composed in the stiff courtesy of diplomats. They bring gifts, a bolt of blue cloth, a musket, a book with the cross pressed into its leather. Their Malagasy interpreters stand between worlds, voices carefully neutral, eyes flicking to the queen's face for any sign of favor or doom. In the council chamber, the air is heavy with the scent of burning resin. No one raises their voice. The queen's advisors, clad in lambus of white and ochre, sit in a semicircle, each man and woman a repository of secrets and old grievances. They speak of treaties of commerce, of the price of gunpowder and the danger of missionaries. The words are slow, deliberate, as if each must be weighed and measured by the ancestors before being allowed to live. The envoys speak of friendship, of civilization, of the blessings of their distant monarchs. But Ranavalona's court remembers the old stories, the Sakalava raids, the French soldiers who came with fire, the treaties that ended in chains. Here, every offer is a threat in disguise, every handshake a test of resolve. The queen listens, her face unreadable, her fingers resting lightly on the arm of her chair. A gesture that has sent men to their deaths for less outside. The drums continue, their rhythm is slower now, a warning that travels farther than words. The city listens, the farmers in the paddies look up, and the children in the alleys fall silent. The queen's message is clear. The highlands are not for sale, and the ancestors are not for bargaining. Within the palace, the foreign gifts are examined by the royal guards, their faces expressionless. The musket is dismantled. The book is read by a trusted scribe. The cloth is tested for hidden poison. Nothing is accepted without suspicion. Nothing is given without calculation. The queen's advisors argue in whispers. Some urge the opening of ports, the acceptance of new weapons, the embrace of foreign trade. Others speak of the old ways, of the danger that comes wrapped in silk and smiles. The queen listens, but her silence is not indecision. It is the silence of the storm before the first drop of rain. Outside, the mist thickens. The drums are joined by a single horn, its note long and mournful, echoing across the terraced hills. The envoys are shown to their quarters, their every movement watched by unseen eyes. The negotiations have begun, but the outcome was decided long before their arrival. In this palace, tradition is not a comfort. It is a weapon honed by centuries of betrayal. Night settles heavily over the rova, and in its deepest chamber, the queen remembers. She was not always a queen. Once she was a girl in a house of rivals, a pawn in the games of men whose ambitions were measured in blood. She remembers the night her father's friends vanished, one by one called to the palace and never seen again. She remembers her mother's silence, the way her hands shook as she braided her daughter's hair, the way she whispered the old prayers to keep their names from the mouths of the dead. Betrayal was the first language she learned. The lesson was not shouted, but delivered in the hush of closed doors, in the sideways glances at the market, in the sudden absence of a familiar voice. Fear became a second skin, but she learned to wear it like armor. She watched, she listened, she survived. The night her husband died, poison perhaps, or the slow rot of old wounds. She stood at the edge of the palace and felt the weight of the highlands pressing down on her. The men in the council chamber had already begun to divide his legacy, their hands sticky with the promise of power. She saw the future in their eyes, a future in which she would be swept aside, a footnote in the story of greater men. She made her vow that night as the mist drifted through the rafters and the drums called the ancestors to witness. Never again she would not be powerless. She would not be betrayed. Fear could be mastered, shaped, turned outward. If she must live in the shadow of suspicion, she would make it her own. She learned to trust only silence, to measure every word, to see the knife behind every smile. In the palace of her memory, the drums never stopped. The foreign envoys wait for an answer. The advisors murmur their arguments, some for openness, others for isolation. The queen sits in silence, her eyes moving from face to face, weighing the measure of each soul. That evening she calls for the trial. It is not announced in the square. There are no proclamations, no public accusations. A name is whispered to a captain of the guard, and a door is closed behind him. The accused is not a foreigner, but a man of the court, a noble whose loyalties have shifted one time too many, whose tongue has carried secrets to the wrong ears. He is brought before the queen in the hush of night, his face pale in the torchlight, his hands trembling but empty. The trial is not a spectacle. There is no crowd, no applause, no cries for mercy. The queen speaks softly, her questions precise, her gaze unblinking. The man answers, but the truth is not in his words. It is in the way his eyes flicker to the door, in the sweat that beads on his brow, in the silence that follows each denial. When it is finished, the queen nods once. The guards lead the man away. The march ends with no survivors. In the morning, the court assembles. The queen's advisors take their places, careful to keep their eyes lowered. The envoys are summoned, their gifts returned with polite thanks. The queen's answer is delivered with perfect courtesy. Madagascar will remain as it is. The ports will not open. The missionaries will not preach. The foreign traders may visit, but they will not stay. The message is clear, even in its gentleness. The highlands belong to the ancestors, and the queen's will is the only law. The court understands what judgment looks like, even when it is delivered in silence. That night, the drums are louder. Their rhythm is relentless, echoing through the city. up the hills into the dreams of those who serve and those who watch. The envoys do not sleep. The courtiers exchange glances, each wondering if their name will be the next whispered in the darkness. The queen sits alone in her chamber, the torchlight flickering over her face. She does not smile, she does not weep. She listens to the drums, and she remembers. Morning in Antananarivo is a pale, uncertain thing. The mist lingers longer than it should, reluctant to surrender the city to the sun. In the palace, servants move with unusual care, their footsteps muffled by the woven mats, their voices hushed, even in the kitchens. The absence of a single courtier is not remarked upon, but it is felt a space at the table, a silence in the conversation, a shadow where a man once stood. The queen gains what she must, the respect of her counsel, the fear of her final haunting line. Mist rises in the darkness before dawn, curling in slow, uncertain tendrils across the high plateau. The air is thick, humid, heavy, and cold, as if the ancestors themselves exhaled through the stones of Antananarivo's high walls. Along the crest of the Rova, torches burn low, their flames shivering in the wind's uncertain breath. The wooden corridors of the palace creak under the weight of footsteps that never hurry. Every sound is measured, every shadow watched. In the courtyards, the drums begin. 3 slow beats, a pause, then 2, echoing out across the sleeping city. Not a summons, but a warning, the pulse of a heart that doesn't trust sleep. Guards stand beneath the eaves, their eyes catching, and then sliding away from one another. Uncertain who truly keeps watch, the king is long dead. The new sovereign does not announce herself with trumpets or banners. She is presence in absence, a silence that precedes command. Somewhere within a chamber paneled in dark wood, a single candle burns beside a lacquered box. Its flame gutters, then steadies. The watchers in the corridor do not speak. They know the queen is awake. They know that tonight, as every night, someone is being weighed in the balance. No one knows whose name will be spoken to the darkness. The city holds its breath. The ancestors listen, and the living remember that in Madagascar, silence is never empty. The palace is a labyrinth of polished floors and secrets. Here the air carries the scent of old wood sweat and the faint metallic tang of fear. Power does not shout, it moves in the hush between footsteps, in the slow, deliberate exchange of glances across the council table. The foreign envoys, French-English, their tongues thick with promises, wait in an outer hall, clutching their letters and gifts, rehearsing words that will not save them. Within the council gathers advisors, in embroidered lambas faces carved by caution and sleeplessness, bow low but never kneel. The queen sits at the head, her gaze unreadable, her hands unmoving on the redwood table. She listens as her ministers speak one by one, their voices careful as footsteps on wet stone. The subject is always the same, the encircling threat of foreign hands, the memory of the Marina's hard-won independence, the question of who tonight will be loyal and who will not. No one interrupts. No one raises their voice. The queen's silence is the axis around which the room revolves. She is more than a woman. She is a vessel, for the ancestors' will, the living mouth of the dead kings whose spirits haunt the rafters. To challenge her is to challenge the island itself. But the old ways are threatened. Missionaries build chapels on the hills. Traders press for treaties that read like chains. There are whispers, always whispers, that some in the court would welcome the foreign gold, the foreign faith. Loyalty, once simple, is now a riddle with no safe answer. Tonight, the Queen's eyes linger on a young advisor whose father once pledged himself to the French. His hands tremble when he speaks. The others watch him, then avert their gaze. The Queen says nothing, but in the silence, the threat is complete. The drums outside grow softer, as if retreating into the mist. The council disperses each advisor, returning to his quarters with the knowledge that the Queen's memory is long, her patience cold, and her justice never hurried. There is a memory that never leaves her, not in the hush before dawn, nor in the fevered quiet after judgment has been passed. It is the memory of a girl, not yet queen, watching the world collapse around her in the smoke and confusion of a failed alliance. She remembers the night the old king's enemies came, and how the corridors filled with running feet and the sound of knives drawn in darkness. She remembers the face of the man who had promised to protect her. He turned away, his oath dissolved in fear. She remembers the taste of betrayal, metallic and warm, as if she had bitten her own tongue. In that moment, she learned what it meant to be powerless, to be a pawn in a game played by men who smiled and lied and vanished when the shadows lengthened. She swore then, in the cold silence that followed, that she would never be powerless again. That fear would not rule her. She would rule fear. She learned to listen to the silence, to trust no promise but the one she made to herself. She became a student of suspicion, a collector of secrets, a mistress of the pause that precedes the knife. Now, as queen, she carries that wound like a talisman. Every council meeting, every loyalty trial, every measured word is a stone in the fortress. She builds around her heart. She knows that love is brittle, and trust is a luxury for the dead. The living survive by vigilance alone. The decision is made without ceremony. There is no proclamation, no spectacle. Only a summons delivered at dusk when the mist is thickest and the city's breath is slow. The accused is a minor noble, a man whose loyalty has always been suspect, whose name is whispered in the same breath as foreign gold. He is called to the Rova, his footsteps muffled on the sodden earth. Inside, the air is colder than outside. The queen sits beneath a tapestry, depicting the ancestors' kings and queens who watch with painted, unblinking eyes. The accused kneels, his forehead pressed to the mat. The council is present, but silent. The drums have stopped. The queen speaks softly, her words measured and final. She recites the charges: secret meetings with missionaries, the acceptance of gifts, the failure to report foreign approaches. The accused does not deny them. He only pleads quietly, without hope, that his service has been loyal, that his intentions were pure. His voice is thin, already half vanished. She gestures. 2 guards step forward. The man is led away. The corridor swallows him. No one follows. No one asks what judgment will look like. The court understands there is no spectacle, no crowd, only the slow, deliberate march down a corridor lined with ancestral spears and shields. The man does not return from the trial. His family will be told in the morning that he has been sent to the countryside, that he is serving the Queen's will in silence. They will understand the message, and they will not ask questions. The court disperses. Some advisors bow a little lower as they leave. Others keep their eyes on the floor. Loyalty has been tested and found brittle in the cold. The Queen sits alone for a long while after her face unreadable, her thoughts hidden behind the mask of power. Outside, the drums begin again, their rhythm slower now, as if mourning the cost of survival. The palace is quieter after such nights. Servants move with greater care, their footsteps barely audible on the polished wood. Advisors speak in whispers, if at all. The Queen walks the upper corridors alone, her shadow long and thin in the torchlight. She pauses at a window, looking out over a city that both fears and needs her power. She knows is not a crown or a throne. It is the silence that follows a judgment, the space left by the vanished, the hush that settles over the Rova. When the drums have finished their warning, she has gained another measure of security, another thread in the web that holds the kingdom together, but she has lost something too. A little more trust, a little more of the warmth that once made the palace a home. She thinks of the ancestors, of the weight of their silence. She wonders, not for the first time, if they watch her with approval or with sorrow. She wonders if the cost of survival is too high, or if it is simply the price that must be paid by those who refuse to be conquered. Behind her in the corridor, a whisper stirs the air. It is not a word, but the possibility of a word. It lingers cold and uncertain as the Queen turns away from the window and disappears into the ancestral silence. Tomorrow, the city will wake and find the world unchanged. But the palace will remember, and the drums will remind them. Loyalty is a question that never truly ends. The silence of the ancestors is never empty. Mist rises in slow, coiling breaths from the red earth of the highlands. It is the hour before dawn, when the world is neither night nor morning. The city of Antananarivo sits folded in vapor, its Rova, palace, crowning the hill like a memory half remembered, half feared. The air is thick, not warm but weighted, pressing against skin and bone with the heaviness of ancestral expectation. Drum beats roll across the slopes, distant and unhurried, each one a pulse marking the passage of secrets. Somewhere a torch gutters its flame, fighting the damp casting shadows that flicker and stretch along the wooden corridors. Within these corridors, the world is reduced to footsteps and breath, to the creak of ancient planks and the hush of cloth against lacquered walls. Servants move in pairs, never alone. Eyes low, voices lower. Every gesture is measured, ritualized, as if the air itself might betray a careless whisper. Here power is not spoken. It is inhaled. It saturates the beams overhead, the woven mats underfoot, the lacquered doors that close with a sound like a verdict. The queen is not seen, but she is felt. She is the narrowing of the hall, the pause before a bow. The reason a torch is never left to burn too long. In the antechamber, a watcher waits. His eyes are dark, his hands folded. He listens not for footsteps, but for the silence that follows them. Above his head, the roof groans. Outside, the mist presses against the wooden lattice, eager to seep inside. Somewhere a woman's shadow passes behind a screen. She does not pause. She does not need to. The watcher bows his head, and the silence deepens. In this palace, every night is a vigil. Every dawn is a question. Every answer is dangerous. The kingdom breathes beneath the weight of tradition. Ancestors are not a memory. Here, they are presence as real as the stone tombs that dot the hillsides. Their laws are older than the city, older than the drums that summon council, older than the language of treaties and trade. Yet the world presses in. Beyond the mist, foreign ships anchor in the harbors, their sails white as bone, their envoys heavy with silk and scripture, and the promise of machines that do not tire. They come with gifts, with contracts, with prayers written in unfamiliar hands. They speak of progress, of alliance, of salvation. But within the Rova, the air is colder. The Queen's Council meets in a room paneled with rosewood, the walls carved with the stories of kings and queens who ruled by the favor of the dead. The advisors sit in a half circle, backs straight, eyes wary. Each word is weighed before it is spoken, each silence longer than the last. Here a misstep is not corrected, it is erased. The Queen's presence is a gravity that bends the room. She sits at the apex, her gaze unreadable, her hands resting on the arms of a chair older than any living memory. She listens. She does not interrupt. When an advisor speaks of the foreign envoys, of their offers and their warnings, she says nothing. The drums from the courtyard are a reminder. The ancestors watch, and the ancestors judge. No decision is made quickly. There is no debate, only the slow circling of suspicion. Who among them carries the words of outsiders in their pocket? Who has been seen at the missionary's house or accepted a gift too fine for their station? The Queen's eyes linger on each face in turn. There is nothing hurried, nothing raised. The threat is in the stillness, in the way. A single question can hang in the air until it becomes unbearable. When the meeting ends, no one rises first. The Queen's word is not needed. Her silence is command enough. Outside, the mist is lifting, but within the palace, the fog thickens. Every advisor knows the price of loyalty is vigilance. The cost of error is not spoken, but it is understood. The foreign ships will wait. The Queen's patience is older than their maps. In the hush of her private chamber, where the world is reduced to breath and shadow, the Queen remembers the wound that shaped her. She was a girl, then not yet crowned, not yet feared. The night her father was betrayed, when a friend became a whisperer, and a whisper became a death. She learned that trust is a currency that devalues with use. She learned how quickly affection can be weaponized, how the softest voice can carry the sharpest blade. She remembers the cold, the way it seeped through the wooden walls. the way her mother's hands trembled as she gathered her close. She remembers the silence of the night, after when no one dared speak her father's name, when every servant's step was a threat. She remembers the taste of fear, metallic and persistent, and the knowledge that survival would require more than obedience. It would require vigilance. It would require a heart that could freeze and thaw at will. She did not cry. She watched, she listened. She learned to read the spaces between words, the hesitations in a bow, the glances traded behind closed doors. She understood in that long night that power is not given. It is taken and kept and defended with every breath. She made a vow, silent and unbreakable. Never again would she be the one who waited for judgment. She would be the one who judged. Now, in the quiet of her reign, that vow is a scar that never fades. Fear is not her enemy. It is the tool she wields, as precise and necessary as a knife in the dark. The Tangina ordeal is older than the city, older than the palisades that ring the hilltop, older than any foreign tongue. It is a test of loyalty, of innocence, of fate. The poison is prepared in silence. The kernel of the Tangina nut ground and mixed with water drawn before dawn. There is no ceremony, no spectacle, only the gathered witnesses, the queen, her advisors, the accused. The air is close heavy with expectation. This morning, the accused is a man whose service spans decades. His voice has guided kings. His counsel has shaped laws. But suspicion is a shadow that lengthens with the years, and a whisper, carefully placed, artfully timed, is enough to summon the ordeal. He kneels, head bowed, hands steady. He does not plead, he does not protest. The queen's eyes rest on him, neither kind nor cruel. She is the measure, not the blade. The ordeal is simple. Swallow. Wait, prove. If the poison does not kill, innocence is declared. If the body fails, guilt is confirmed by the ancestors themselves. The man drinks. The silence is total, broken only by the faint echo of drums from the city below. Time stretches. The queen does not look away. When it is over, there is no shout, no weeping. The man is carried away, his fate sealed in the privacy of the ancestral silence. The court understands what judgment looks like. The march ended with no survivors. In the days that follow, the corridors grow quieter. Advisors speak less. Listen more. Every gift is refused. Every invitation declined. The foreign envoys wait in outer chambers, their messages growing more urgent, more desperate. The queen receives them with the same unhurried gravity. She listens, she nods, she offers nothing. In the palace, the Tangina is both shield and blade. It is the queen's answer to the pressure of foreign hands, to the restlessness of her own court. It is the pact she offers, loyalty proven by ordeal, suspicion answered by silence. No one is above the test. No one is indispensable. The queen's authority is not written in proclamations or treaties. It is written in the absence of those who once stood close, in the chill that settles after a name is spoken for the last time. She rules not by love, not by terror, but by a devotion sharpened by fear, a loyalty that fractures in shadows and reforms each time more brittle than before. Night returns to the Rova. Thick and suffocating, the drums have ceased. The only sound is the wind against the wooden walls, the distant murmur of the city below. In her chamber, the queen sits alone. The faces of the vanished flicker at the edge of her memory, unbidden and unwelcome. She does not mourn, but neither does she forget. Each disappearance is a subtraction, a calculation in the ledger of power. The court is quieter now. Advisors are careful, their loyalty sharper, their eyes more distant. The foreign envoys linger, their hopes diminished. The queen has gained silence, obedience, the illusion of peace. But the cost is measured in solitude, in the weight of glances that never quite meet her own, in the knowledge that every shield is also a blade pointed inward. She closes her eyes. The air is heavy with the scent of wood smoke and old incense. Somewhere a torch gutters its flame. Dying in the damp, the ancestors are silent, but their judgment lingers in the hush before sleep. Mist rises where the highland grasses break the bones of ancient earth. Curling in the hollows beneath Antananarivo's crown, the night presses close, thick, metallic, and slow. Its breath heavy with the memory of rain and blood across the slopes. The Rova stands, a citadel of dark wood and ancestral stone, its palisades biting the sky, its torches guttering in the windless dark. Somewhere within, a drum sounds, not urgent, not frantic, but steady. A warning traced in rhythm, echoing off the hollowed logs and rafters, murmuring through the courtyards where shadows gather. The city below, half shrouded in fog, listens as the beat climbs the hills, winding through the alleys like a rumor. In the wooden corridors, the watchers are silent. They move without words, bare feet on polished floors, faces turned away from the light, eyes sharp as obsidian. Here, silence is not absence. It is a presence, thick as oil, watched by ancestors whose portraits stare from the walls, their judgment colder than the night. At the heart of the palace, power moves unseen. Its shape is a question. Its scent, fear. Each torch flame shivers, dancing in the breath of someone who waits, listening for the footfall that will not come. The drums do not quicken. They do not need to. They are not a call to arms, but a reminder. The queen is awake, and she does not sleep easily. The Rova is built for listening, its beams. Remember every word, every oath, every betrayal that has passed beneath their weight. Tonight, the halls are cold with the hush of anticipation. There are no shouts, only the careful exchange of glances, the measured tilt of a chin, the rustle of silk, as advisors gather in the council room. The air is heavy with the scent of burning resin and the faint metallic tang of unease. Foreign envoys have come and gone, some bearing gifts, others threats, all of them carrying the promise of intrusion. They speak of treaties, of commerce, of faith. They offer progress, but demand tribute. Their languages twist through the palace like smoke, sweet and poisonous. A Frenchman's polished phrase, an Englishman's polite smile, a missionary's whispered prayer. The Queen's court listens, and in their silence they weigh every word, every gesture. But the Queen herself, her presence, is felt more than seen. She sits behind a screen of woven reeds, flanked by the carved staves of her authority. Her voice is low, precise, never hurried. She asks questions that unravel answers before they are spoken. She does not flinch at the mention of guns or gold or God. She remembers the last time foreigners came with promises. She remembers what was taken. Among her advisors, loyalty is a brittle thing. Some have roots as old as the hills. Others are newly risen, their ambitions still raw and bleeding. All know the cost of a misstep. The Queen's gaze is a blade that cuts through pretense. Her words are measured, but her silences are longer still. In those silences, the court remembers the fate of those who spoke too freely, who listened too eagerly to foreign tongues. Tonight, a rumor moves through the palace, a name spoken, then swallowed, a plot, perhaps, or only the shadow of one. No one raises their voice, no one accuses. The Queen listens, the drums continue, slow and implacable. Outside, the mist thickens inside, the air tightens, waiting for the knife to turn before the crown, before the drums. There was a girl in a house of rivals. She learned early that the world is a place of shifting shadows, where a careless word can be a death sentence, and trust is a luxury for the foolish. She remembers the night her father's blood was spilled to settle an old score. She remembers the way the house emptied, the way her mother's hands shook as she gathered the children, the way the neighbors watched with eyes that never blinked. She remembers the taste of betrayal. It is not sharp, but slow, like poison in water, spreading until every vein burns with it. She learned to keep her voice low, her steps careful, her secrets close. She learned that fear cannot be banished, only mastered, that to survive is to listen more than speak, to watch more than act. When the old king called her to the palace, she did not tremble. She carried her wound like a shield on the night her husband died. The court gathered in the antechamber, waiting for the verdict of succession. She watched them, the ones who smiled too easily, the ones who looked away. She recognized in their faces the same hunger that had devoured her childhood. She made her vow, then silent and absolute. Never again would she be the one left powerless in the dark. Fear would be her ally, betrayal her teacher. She would rule as the ancestors demanded, without mercy, without apology. Tonight, the Queen's resolve is tested. The valley below flickers with rumors of rebellion. In the shadows, men gather merchants with foreign coin, soldiers whose loyalty is split by promises whispered in the dark. The court knows the pattern: a plot, a warning, a reckoning. But there are no proclamations, no public trials. The Queen's justice is not a spectacle. It is a silence that falls like a shroud. A name is spoken at the council table, a trusted officer, whose lineage is noble, whose service has been long. His eyes do not flicker, but his hands are still. The Queen's question is simple. His answer is measured, but the silence that follows is heavier than any lie. She nods, once the meeting ends. The officer is escorted away, not with chains, but with ceremony. No one speaks as he passes. No one meets his eyes. The march through the palace is slow. At each threshold, the guards bow their heads. At the final door, the officer pauses as if to speak. But the moment passes. The door closes. The court does not see him again. There is no announcement, no mourning. The Queen does not explain. The city wakes to the news that he has gone to serve the ancestors. The meaning is clear. The march ended in silence. In the following days, others are summoned. Some return, their eyes hollow, their loyalty redoubled by fear. Others do not. Their families receive gifts, a bolt of cloth, a measure of rice. The message is unspoken but understood. The queen's power is not in the spectacle of punishment, but in the certainty of consequence. Every advisor, every captain, every servant knows. The eyes of the palace miss nothing. The walls themselves are listening. Foreign envoys inquire, obliquely, about the missing men. The queen's answer is a smile that does not reach her eyes. She speaks of unity, of tradition, of the peace that comes from order. The drums continue, steady as a heartbeat. The city learns to move more quietly. The court learns to weigh every word, every gesture, as if the queen herself were listening from behind every door. In the hush that follows, the palace breathes out, uneasy, unbroken. The queen sits alone in her chamber, the night pressing at the windows, the mist curling beneath the eaves. She does not weep, she does not rejoice. She weighs the cost, as she always has, power bought with silence, loyalty purchased with fear. The absence of her rivals is a kind of victory, but it is not triumph. It is only survival. Stretched from one dusk to the next, she walks the wooden corridors, her footsteps soft, her shadow long. The portraits of the ancestors watch her pass, their eyes dark and unyielding. She wonders, not for the first time, if they approve, if the kingdom they built can endure the price she must pay to keep it whole. Her enemies are gone, but the silence they leave behind is deeper than before. Outside, the drums fade, leaving only the hush of mist and memory. The city sleeps uneasily, every household listening for footsteps on the threshold, every advisor wondering if their loyalty will be enough when the next silence falls. In the palace, the queen stands at her window, watching the fog drift over the highlands. Her breath slow, her gaze unblinking. Somewhere in the dark, a whisper stirs, a question left unanswered, a warning carried on the wind. The queen's reign will not end in fire or thunder, but in the quiet certainty that, in the Rova of Antananarivo, power is a shadow cast by fear, and loyalty is measured in silence. And tonight, as the mist thickens and the ancestors hold their breath, the queen is listening final haunting line. Mist climbs the high slopes of Antananarivo, swallowing the red earth and the distant rice fields, until only the stone and wood of the royal Rova remain. Suspended in the breathless dark, the night air is thick, humid, pressing against the skin and the spirit alike. Somewhere beyond the ramparts, a drum speaks, a single measured pulse that echoes across the hilltop. Neither warning nor welcome, but a reminder that the palace does not sleep within the wooden corridors. Torchlight flickers and gutters, casting long shadows that shiver across polished floors. The scent is of old resin and damp earth, of wax and the faintest trace of burnt offerings. Servants move with the silence of the hunted, their eyes lowered, their footsteps measured. No one speaks above a whisper. Even the rats in the walls dare not scurry too loudly. The air vibrates with tension, a hush so profound it becomes its own kind of sound, a pressure behind the ears. In the audience hall, the ancestral drums have ceased, but the memory of their rhythm lingers here. Watchers gather in silence, their faces carved from patience and calculation. Eyes flicker in the gloom, each gaze a question that will not be spoken aloud. The throne at the far end is empty, yet its presence is felt, a weight that bends the will of all who enter. Somewhere behind a carved wooden screen, a watcher observes the watchers. The queen is not seen, but her absence is a presence. Her shadow stretches farther than the torchlight, reaching into every corner where secrets might hide. Tonight, the palace is a mouth closed tight against the world outside. The foreign shadow waits, a promise of salvation, a threat of ruin. Inside the queen's silence is the only answer. In the days that follow, foreign feet mark the palace stones. They come in boots, muddied from the highland rains, bearing gifts wrapped in silk and the sharper edges of expectation. European traders, English missionaries, French diplomats, each with their own language, their own gospel, their own hunger. They bow low and speak of progress, of commerce, of the one true faith. Their words are smooth, their smiles practiced, their hands never quite empty. But the highland air is not so easily parted. The Queen's court receives these envoys with ancestral formality, every gesture weighed against the memory of past betrayals. There is no warmth in the welcome, only the brittle courtesy of a land that remembers invasion. Advisors in red lamba sit in careful rows, their faces blank, their silences deeper than any spoken oath. The Queen herself remains unseen, her voice relayed by intermediaries, measured, deliberate, never hurried to the foreigners. It is a labyrinth of custom and ritual, a negotiation that never quite begins. They offer treaties and trinkets, Bibles and rifles, promises that glitter like broken glass. In return, they are met with riddles and proverbs, with the unyielding stone of tradition. Every question is answered with a question. Every offer is met with a pause, long enough to chill the blood. The envoys sense they are being watched not by one woman, but by 1,000 years of ancestors. Their judgment heavier than any crown. Within the palace, the tension coils tighter. Some advisors whisper of opportunity, of alliances that might strengthen the kingdom, of trade that might enrich the court. Others remember the fate of those who trusted too easily, and their counsel is caution wrapped in dread. The Queen listens to all, but her eyes betray nothing she knows. The foreign shadow carries more than gold. It brings new gods, new laws, a new order that would hollow out the old outside. The drums speak again, slower now, as if marking the heartbeat of the highlands. The message is clear to those who understand. The Queen's patience is not infinite, and the price of intrusion is paid in silence. There are nights when the Queen does not sleep, when the weight of the crown presses down like a hand at her throat. In the quiet hours, she remembers the wound, the moment when trust became a weapon, when the world she knew was shattered by betrayal. She was young then, a consort in a court that smiled with its teeth. She trusted a friend, a voice in the dark, A promise whispered beneath the rafters, power shifted in the night. And she learned that love is a blade, sharpened by ambition. When the morning came, those who had spoken for her were gone, vanished into the hush of the palace. Their names never spoken again. She saw the blood on the threshold, the silence in the halls, and she understood. Fear is the currency of survival, and mercy is a debt paid in weakness. She made her vow, in the shadow of that loss, never again would she be powerless. Never again would she wait for judgment to fall from another's hand. She would be the silence that chooses, the shadow that watches, the memory that endures when all else is forgotten. Now, as foreign voices echo through her palace, she feels the old wound ache. It is not pain, but a coldness, a reminder that trust is a luxury she cannot afford. Every treaty is a blade. Every alliance is a test. The queen does not forget. She has learned to wear her fear like armor, to turn it outward, to make it the terror that keeps her throne. The foreign shadow presses closer. A missionary's letter is intercepted, its words heavy with hope and treason. It speaks of conversion, of a kingdom remade in the image of distant gods. It names allies within the court, men whose loyalty has always been a little too eager, a little too quick. The queen receives the news in silence. No anger clouds her face, no command is spoken in haste. Instead, she calls for a council, summoning her advisors to the ancestral hall. The air is thick with incense and anticipation. Every man summoned knows that tonight, loyalty is not a matter of words, but of survival. The queen's gaze moves from face to face, searching for the tremor. The glance that lingers too long, the sweat at the brow. She asks questions, simple, precise. Each one a thread that unravels the tapestry of secrets. One advisor, a man whose voice has always been too loud in favor of foreign ways, stumbles in his answers. The silence that follows is absolute. A decision is made, not with spectacle, but with the quiet efficiency of survival. The accused is summoned for a private audience. No one sees him leave the queen's chamber. The next morning, his seat at the council is empty. The court understands what judgment looks like. Later, a loyalty trial is announced. Public, but unspectacular. Those whose names are called step forward, their faces pale in the torchlight. They are given the Tangina ordeal, a test of faith, a poison distilled from nut and tradition. The ritual is ancient, its verdict final. The march ends in silence. Those who return bear the mark of survival, but their loyalty is now brittle, edged with fear. The queen watches from behind her screen, her face unreadable. She has sent a message, not only to the foreigners who wait at her gates, but to her own court. The kingdom will not be remade by foreign hands, and betrayal is met with the silence of the grave. Outside, the drums begin again. Slow and heavy, the foreign envoys hear them and shiver. They do not know the language, but they understand the meaning. In the days that follow, the palace is quieter than before. Servants move with greater care. Advisors choose their words as if each syllable is weighed in gold. The foreign envoys are kept waiting, their petitions unanswered, their gifts untouched. They sense the chill in the air, the way every gaze is measured, every silence pregnant with threat The queen has gained what she needed. Obedience caution. The brittle unity of a court reminded of its own mortality. The foreign shadow is held at bay, not by walls or armies, but by the dread that seeps through the wooden halls. The knowledge that power here is absolute and silent, but there is a cost. Each act of survival carves away another piece of trust, another thread of connection. The queen stands alone at the heart of the Rova, surrounded by loyalty that fractures in the shadows, by devotion that tastes of fear. She has become the silence she once feared, the judgment that cannot be escaped. At night, when the drums have faded and the mist creeps in through the cracks, she walks the corridors alone. Her footsteps echo in the emptiness. She listens for the whispers of the ancestors, for the voices that judge her, as she has judged others. Somewhere in the darkness, a servant murmurs a prayer for mercy. The queen pauses, her face lost in shadow. She does not answer. The palace holds its breath, waiting for dawn, for judgment, for the next silence. Who will dare speak when the queen's silence is the sharpest blade of all final haunting line? Night in Antananarivo is not a gentle thing. The mist clings to the highland slopes, thick as memory, rising from the red earth, curling around the stones of the royal Rova. The drums begin long before midnight, low, deliberate, never hurried, spilling their sound across the city's hills, a warning no one dares to disregard. Their rhythm is the kingdom's pulse, slow, unyielding, ancient within the palace. Torchlight shudders against polished wood. Shadows stretch and recede along the corridor walls, each flicker a secret. The air is heavy, humid, the kind that makes every breath feel stolen. In these halls, silence is not absence, but presence, a hush deeper than sleep, oppressive as the weight of ancestral bones. Here, the footsteps of centuries are measured and soft. The watchers, servants, guards, counselors, move with the caution of those who have seen men vanish for less tonight. The queen is unseen, but not absent. Her presence is a chill that seeps through the lattice screens, a pressure that bends the spine of every man and woman who passes beneath the carved rafters. In the gloom, the watchers glance at one another, then look away. The Rova is a labyrinth of eyes, all turned inward outside. The drums do not falter. Their echo is a summons, a warning, a memory that the night belongs to the sovereign, and in the hush that follows each beat, something older than law, older even than the crown, waits and listens to rule. Madagascar is to balance on the knife edge between worlds. Within the Rova, tradition is not a word, but a living thing. Ancestral, jealous. Watchful beyond its gates, the world presses in. European envoys with their careful smiles, missionaries bearing foreign gods, traders whose gold is heavy with expectation. Each brings a promise, each a threat. The queen sits at the fulcrum, her hands steady, her eyes never resting. In council, voices are low measured, no one interrupts. The air is thick with the scent of burning resin and old wood. Every word is weighed as if it might be the last. Advisors bow their heads, speaking only when spoken to. A pause, a glance, a breath too long. These are the tools of negotiation now, more dangerous than any blade tonight. The foreign emissary waits in a side chamber, his gifts unopened at his feet. He has come with letters from the sea, with promises of alliance, with warnings cloaked as friendship. He is not the first to try the Queen's patience. He will not be the last. But the Queen's counsel is not for outsiders within the wooden walls. Power moves in silence, an old advisor. His beard white as ash counsels caution. Another younger eye's flickering suggests opportunity. The Queen's gaze moves from one to the other, slow, unreadable. She listens, but she does not yield. Her fingers rest on the arm of her chair, motionless. The room waits outside. The drums shift a new rhythm, a message, perhaps, or a warning. In the palace, no one speaks of fear, but everyone feels it. The memory of old betrayals lingers here. The knowledge that every favor can turn, every pledge curdled to poison. Tradition demands loyalty, but the Queen knows loyalty is a river that runs deepest in the dark. In the end, the foreigner is left waiting. The Queen retires, her decision unspoken. In the corridors, her courtiers disperse in silence, each measuring the meaning of her stillness, each wondering what the dawn will bring. Power is not given, it is taken, and it is kept by those who remember what it is to be powerless. Ranavalona was once a girl in another's shadow, her fate a coin in the hands of men. She remembers the night her father's blood was washed from the stones, the way the servants would not meet her eyes, the cold certainty that protection was a fiction. She remembers the whisper that reached her through the walls, her name spoken as a warning, not a hope. Betrayal is a teacher with a patient hand. The lesson was slow. Deliberate trust is a wound, and wounds must be cauterized, not coddled. When the king died, she was not the favored heir. She was the inconvenient wife, the outsider. But she listened to the silence. She learned to read the space between words, the flicker of a glance, the meaning in what was not said. On the night of her ascension, she stood alone in the ancestral hall, the air thick with the scent of old incense and older secrets. She looked into the darkness and made a vow. Never again. Fear, she learned, can be mastered. It can be bent, shaped, wielded. The one who controls fear does not tremble. She watches others tremble instead. The wound never closed. It hardened, became armor. In the palace, every door is locked twice. Every ally is a suspect. The Queen's trust is a blade honed by memory, and she keeps it sharp tonight. The council gathers in the long hall. The air close and tense. News has come from the south. A nobleman's loyalty is in question. The accusation is quiet, almost polite. No one raises a voice. The Queen listens, her face as still as carved wood. The accused is not summoned. He is simply expected. Outside, the mist thickens. The drums fall silent. The ordeal is not public. It does not need to be. The Queen's justice is not spectacle, but certainty. The accused walks the length of the corridor, flanked by guards whose faces are unreadable. He does not protest. He does not plead. In this palace, innocence is a fragile thing. Protest is an admission of fear. The loyalty trial is swift. There is no audience. Only the ancestral silence and the weight of expectation. The ordeal is not always tangina. Sometimes it is a question, a test of memory, a recounting of old oaths. Sometimes it is the simple act of walking into the night and not returning to night. The march ends with no survivors. In the council chamber, the queen sits in silence, her eyes on the empty space where the accused once stood. Her advisors bow their heads, understanding the lesson. There are no tears, no outcry. The court understands what judgment looks like. In the corridors, word spreads without sound. The nobleman's household is quiet. His servants find new masters. His name is not spoken, but his absence is a warning in the city below. The people sense a tightening, a sense that the walls have grown higher, the night deeper. The queen does not sleep. She walks the halls, her steps soundless on the polished floor. She pauses before the ancestral tablets, her head bowed. She does not pray. She listens outside. The mist presses against the windows somewhere. A single drumbeat echoes, then stops. Morning comes slowly, gray and uncertain. The city stirs, but the palace remains hushed. The queen's advisors gather, their faces carefully blank. The foreign envoys are told nothing. They wait in their quarters, wondering which rules have changed in the aftermath. The queen gains peace, a brittle, bloodless peace, sharp-edged and cold. Her authority is unchallenged, her will obeyed, but the cost is measured in silence. An absence that grows with each judgment, a solitude that thickens with every vanished rival. The court walks softly, the servants speak in whispers. Even the drums are muted now, their rhythm cautious, restrained. The queen sits alone, her gaze fixed on the city below. She has what she wanted, power absolute and unyielding, but power is its own prison. The queen is surrounded, yet alone, her trust spent, her heart armored by necessity. Every face is a mask, every pledge a potential betrayal. The kingdom endures, held together by fear and devotion. But the air is heavy with things unsaid in the shadows of the Rova. A whisper lingers, a promise or a warning. The one who survives the night must never sleep. And so the queen watches and waits as the mist rises once more. Final haunting line. Mist rises slow and spectral from the high plateau. It clings to the stone bones of Antananarivo, veiling the Rova's wooden ramparts in a gray ancestral hush. The dawn is a pale bruise on the horizon, its light stifled by the weight of the night that came before. Somewhere below the drums, begin low, insistent the heartbeat of a city that has learned to listen for danger in every echo. A torch gutters in the windless corridor, its flame a nervous tongue against the hewn pillars. The walls, dark with centuries of breath and blood, seem to lean inward, listening. Footsteps pass soft as moths, leaving no trace but a ripple in the silence. In the great hall, the air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and old fear. The ancestors are present here, their judgment pressed into every plank, their silence heavier than the stones beneath the city. Watchers move in the half-light faces, hidden by the hooded folds of their thoughts. Their eyes do not meet. In this place, a glance is a risk, a word, a wound. The throne at the hall's far end is empty, but presence is a thing that does not require flesh, power. Here is not a crown, but a shadow felt, not seen, obeyed, not addressed. She moves unseen, a rumor in the corridors, the air shifting just enough to remind the living that they are watched. The queen is a silence that chooses when to speak. The highlands have always been a crucible, forging kings and breaking them in equal measure. Now the pressure is different, subtle, foreign, relentless. Beyond the walls, the world creeps closer. French traders with their polished silver and quick, hungry eyes. English missionaries with their books and unctuous promises, rumors of steamships and gunpowder, of treaties written in foreign tongues. But within the Rova tradition is a blade honed by centuries. The court gathers beneath the woven roof, every advisor's back straight, every breath measured. The Queen's Council is a chessboard of old men and young rivals, each piece moved with care, each silence more dangerous than speech. There are no outbursts here, only the slow, deliberate pressing of advantage, the careful weighing of words. A foreign envoy waits in an antechamber, bearing gifts that are traps in lacquered boxes. He is not invited to the inner circle. His offerings are accepted with cold formality. His requests weighed against the memory of past betrayals. The Queen's answer is always the same: a smile that reveals nothing, a nod that promises less. She listens, but her eyes are elsewhere on the shadows that gather at the edges of her court, on the loyal and the disloyal alike. Within these halls, the old rituals persist. The Tangina ordeal is spoken of in whispers, an ordeal, by poison, a test of faith and fealty. It is not spectacle, but warning. Those summoned to the trial do not return, and no one asks what verdict the ancestors delivered. The court has learned that the Queen's justice is not for the comfort of the living. Every decision is a negotiation with ghosts. The ancestors demand obedience, the foreigners demand access. Between them, the Queen balances on a knife's edge, never showing the wound. Her voice, when it comes, is soft as falling ash. A command, a dismissal, a question that is never truly answered. The city outside waits, breath held for the next drumbeat. Power here is not the roar of conquest, but the slow, suffocating pressure of survival. The Queen's paranoia is not madness, but memory, a record of every betrayal, every foreign promise that ended in chains. In the Rova's wooden halls, loyalty is currency, and trust is more dangerous than poison. There is a memory that does not fade, though the years have tried to drown it in ritual and rule. In her youth before the crown and the silence, she learned the taste of betrayal. Not the sharp public wound, but the slow private kind that hollows a soul. She remembers the night the palace changed. The shadows were longer, then the corridors colder. A whispered promise, a hand withdrawn, the sudden knowledge that protection is a lie. She watched men she called kin turn away, their loyalty dissolving in the face of opportunity. The lesson was simple, and it bled into her bones. Fear is a tool, and the one who wields it survives. She learned to listen for the quiet betrayals, the ones that do not announce themselves. She learned that love is currency spent quickly and forgotten. She learned that a queen must be alone or not at all. From that night, she carried a private vow stitched into the lining of her heart. She would never be powerless again. If loyalty could fracture in darkness, she would become the darkness. If trust could be broken, she would make trust a weapon, not a weakness. She does not speak of that night. She does not need to. The court feels its shadow in every judgment, every silence that stretches too long. The Queen's fear is not visible, but it is the gravity that shapes the kingdom. A decision is made in silence. There are no proclamations, no banners raised, only a summons delivered before dawn when the city's breath is slow, and the mist still hides the faces of the watchers. A group of officers, their loyalty tested too often, walks the length of the palace courtyard. Their feet mark the red clay, a procession with no music, no witness but the ancestors and the restless birds. The Queen does not watch from the window. She does not need to. Her will is the air. They breathe the weight pressing on their backs. The accusation is never spoken aloud. It is enough that suspicion has been cast, that a rumor has found its way to the Queen's ear. In this kingdom, suspicion is a verdict. The loyalty trial is not public, nor is it swift. The accused are led away past the torchlit halls, their faces already erased by the silence that follows them. The march ends with no survivors. The city wakes to the news, but not the details. The court understands what judgment looks like. A chair at council sits empty. A name is not spoken. At roll call, a household receives no word. The message is clear. Though it is never written, devotion is life. Doubt is erasure. In the aftermath, the Queen convenes her advisors. They sit straighter, speak less, weigh every gesture. She asks for counsel and receives only what she already knows. The lesson is not lost on anyone. Power is not asserted in spectacle, but in the quiet certainty that no one is beyond reach. Outside, the drums resume a slow, steady rhythm, not of celebration, but of warning. The people hear and understand the Queen's justice is not for the comfort of crowds, but for the preservation of the kingdom. Her enemies do not die in the square. They vanish, leaving only the dread of absence behind. Foreign envoys learn to choose their words with care. The missionaries pray more quietly. The court's laughter, when it returns, is brittle and brief. The Queen stands alone at the window, watching the mist dissolve beneath the rising sun. Her face is unreadable, her thoughts hidden behind the practiced stillness of survival. The palace is quieter now. Even the birds seem to hesitate before singing. The corridors, stripped of their secrets for a night, settle back into watchful silence. The Queen walks the length of the hall, her footsteps absorbed by the ancient wood. She does not pause at the empty chairs. There is a cost. Always, power is a hunger that feeds on the living and the loyal alike. The Queen gains peace of a kind, the knowledge that her rule will not be challenged today, that the city's fear is a shield as well as a shroud. But the solitude grows heavier. Every absence is a stone in the foundation of her reign. Every vanished rival, a reminder that devotion and terror are the same chain, forged link by careful link. She stands before the ancestral altar, the air thick with the smell of earth and old prayers. The silence here is absolute, broken only by the faint, persistent drumbeat that never quite fades. She does not look back. Outside, the mist lifts, but the shadow remains, The city's stones remember, vanished suns and silent processions. The Queen's power is absolute, but so too is her solitude. In the darkness, a whisper lingers soft, unfinished, heavy with warning. No one is truly loyal in the kingdom of shadows. Mist coils over the highland crown of Antananarivo. Thick as ancestral breath, it settles on the steep slopes, seeps between the stones, drapes the rova in a shroud that blunts the torchlight to a trembling glow. The air is humid, heavy. Every sound, footsteps, the creak of ancient wood, the distant call of a night bird arrives muffled, as if the ancestors themselves are listening and will not tolerate disturbance. Down the terraced hills, drums speak in slow, deliberate cadence. Their voices echo across the valley, not as a summons, but as a warning. This is a night when the Queen does not sleep. The torches gutter along the wooden galleries, their flames gnawed by the damp, their light flickering over carved lintels and the faces of silent guards, men who have learned to stand motionless for hours, to become shadows among shadows in these corridors. Nothing is idle. Each watcher's eyes are trained on the darkness behind them as much as on the path ahead. Whispers, if they come at all, are carried by the mist and lost before they reach the ear of power. The Queen's presence is not seen but felt, a pressure in the chest, an awareness that somewhere, in the labyrinth of polished wood and ancestral relics, she is awake and she is listening tonight. The rova is a vessel of memory and dread. The stones remember footsteps that never returned. The drums remember oaths that dissolved in silence. The mist remembers every secret kept and every betrayal punished. It is here, in the hush after midnight, that legacy is forged, not with proclamations, but with the quiet endurance of fear. There is a kind of violence that does not need blood, a violence of presence, of tradition pressed against the glass of intrusion. Ranavalona's reign, now entering its twilight, is defined by this pressure. The slow, suffocating contest between the ancient and the foreign, the known and the unknowable. The envoys from beyond the sea come with their papers and their polished shoes, their faiths and their promises of trade. They bow, but their eyes measure the beams overhead, the distance to the door, the number of guards between themselves and escape. Their words are soft, but each syllable is a wedge, an attempt to pry open the kingdom's heart. They speak of progress, of roads and schools and salvation. They do not speak of conquest, but the Queen hears it all the same. Within the rova, tradition is not a relic, it is a weapon. The Queen's counselors move with the caution of men who know that the wrong word can end a lineage. Their advice comes wrapped in proverbs, their loyalty tested not by declaration, but by endurance. The foreigner's gifts are weighed against ancestral relics, their treaties against the memory of the Vazimba and the Marina, those who bled to keep the mountain sovereign. Power here is measured in silence. It is the silence that falls after a disputed council, when no one dares to be the first to leave. It is the silence of the Queen's gaze, unblinking as she listens to a report of unrest in the southern valleys. It is the silence that follows a judgment when a name is spoken and all present know the cost. Ranavalona sits beneath the carved roof beams, the air around her thick with the scent of burning resin and the weight of centuries. She does not raise her voice. She does not need to. Her authority is the kind that seeps into the bones, that makes men question not only their loyalty, but the loyalty of their own shadows. The world outside grows louder, more insistent. But within these walls, time moves at the pace of dread. Every decision is a negotiation with ghosts, the ancestors who demand purity, the courtiers who demand survival, the foreigners who demand entry. The queen listens to them all and trusts none. In this, she is both fortress and prisoner. Her power absolute, but never unchallenged. The drums outside do not quicken, but their rhythm grows more insistent, as if urging the night to reveal its secrets. Memory is a wound that never closes for Ranavalona. It is the night she was betrayed. Before the crown, before the silence. Before the world learned to fear her name. She remembers the way trust was offered, then withdrawn, the way her future was balanced on the whim of men who measured worth in bloodlines and usefulness. Not in resolve, she remembers the whispered promises that vanished with the dawn, the allies who became strangers, the doors that closed with a finality sharper than any blade. She learned that mercy is not a virtue for those who would rule, that power is not given but taken, that survival demands a heart that can harden itself against hope. It was in the flicker of a dying candle, in the hush that followed her father's disgrace, that she made her vow. Never again would she be powerless. Never again would she allow herself to be surprised by betrayal. In the years that followed, fear became her companion. Not as a tormentor, but as a tutor. She learned to see it in others, to taste it in the air, to use it as both shield and sword. When she ascended the throne, it was not as a woman unscarred, but as one who understood that every alliance is a wager, and every gesture of trust a potential wound. The mist that now cloaks the Rova is not only the breath of the ancestors, but the residue of all the nights she spent learning to read the darkness. She wears her fear like a garment woven through with memory and resolve. It is both her armor and her curse. The court senses it. The people sense it. And the foreigners, those who think themselves immune to such things, sense it too, though they do not have the words for it. It is the fear that keeps her alive, and the fear that will define her legacy. Power is not maintained by hope, but by the careful, relentless turning of the knife. Tonight, the queen makes a decision that will outlive the dawn. A name is brought to her in hushed tones. An advisor whose loyalty, once ironclad, is now corroded by whispers of foreign gold. The accusation is never spoken in full. It hangs in the air like the scent of rain before a storm. The queen listens, her face a mask carved from the same wood as the throne itself. She nods once, the matter is settled. The accused is summoned, not to the glare of public judgment, but to the quiet heart of the Rova, where the ancestral relics watch and the mist lingers. No crowd gathers. There are no proclamations, no cries for mercy, only the soft tread of feet along the corridor, the hush of doors closing, the slow exhale of the guard who knows what must be done. There is a trial, but it is not for show. The court understands what judgment looks like. The accused does not return. The march ends in silence. The queen does not rise from her seat. She does not need to. Her will has been enacted, as certain and as final as the dawn. In the days that follow, the court is quieter. Conversations become shorter, glances more fleeting. Trust, always brittle, now fractures in the shadows. The queen's power is reaffirmed, not by spectacle, but by the absence her decision leaves behind. There is no need to explain. The message is written in the spaces where laughter once dwelled, in the empty seat at the council, in the way footsteps echo a little louder in the corridors. Outside, the drums do not change their rhythm. But those who hear them understand the Queen has acted. The kingdom is held together not by love, not even by law, but by the knowledge that devotion is survival, and that betrayal is a silence from which there is no return. When the mist lifts, the Rova is unchanged. The stones are as cold, the wood as dark, the drums as steady. But something has shifted. A slight thinning of the air, a new wariness in the eyes of those who serve. The Queen walks the corridors alone. She is both more and less than she was before. The decision has cost her, as every decision does, power. She knows is a currency paid in solitude. Each absence she creates becomes another stone in the wall that separates her from the world she rules. She has gained what she must, the assurance that her authority remains unchallenged, the knowledge that her enemies are fewer, if never gone, but she has lost, too. A measure of trust, a fragment of peace, another thread in the fragile tapestry of loyalty that binds the highlands. The city below stirs beneath the dawn. Unaware of the judgment that has passed, the people will remember only the silence, the way the drum sounded a little different, the way the mist lingered longer than usual. In the hush before sunrise, a servant whispers a prayer to the ancestors, somewhere in the Rova. The Queen listens to the silence she has made, and wonders quietly, coldly, if it will be enough. Mist drifts through the open window, and in its chill, a question lingers unspoken. Will the silence remember her name?